Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. In the previous lesson, we saw that if someone wants to do logic with someone else, then they need language. In this lesson, we're going to learn how exactly a logician who wants to do logic with somebody else, how exactly he uses language. And we'll see that he uses language in one of two ways. He uses language either for what logicians call basic signification or for what they call composite signification. Let's take the example of Sayyiduna Ibrahim. Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi salam, we've seen this example several times in previous lessons. He used logic in his dialogue with Namrud, when he said to him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the sun from the east, so you bring it from the west. When he used logic, he used language, and the language that he used was a series of sentences called premises. We'll see later on that premises can also be called propositions. These sentences are composed of a series of words. So the sentence, "You cannot bring the sun from the west," is a premise, and it's composed of a series of words. One of these words is sun. This word, like all of the other words in the sentence, logicians say has basic signification. It signifies meanings in a basic way. Why is it called basic signification? In order to understand why this kind of signification is called basic signification, let's look at the sentence as a whole. The sentence as a whole has composite signification. The sentence conveys a mental meaning, a mental concept, or a series of mental concepts in a composite way, because it is composed of the basic significations of the individual words in the sentences, all brought together in a meaningful way that we call composition. And so because this kind of signification is composite, the other kind of signification is basic. Basic is something that is uncomposed. It's basic because things that are composed use this basic constituent to make the composite whole. We're now going to illustrate the concepts of basic and composite signification with the sentence that we used for illustrative purposes in the previous lesson. The simple sentence, "The man is standing." But in this lesson, we're going to make it a little bit more interesting by adding an adjective and using the sentence, "The handsome man is standing." Now, this sentence is composed of a number of words, which logicians call expressions, because the reason why logicians call them expressions is to emphasize the fact that they are vocalized, and writing is secondary. It follows from the vocalization. The vocalization is primary. So this sentence is composed of a number of expressions, number of sub-expressions. So for example, it's composed of the sub-expression man. The expression man has basic signification, and this kind of expression in English grammar we call a noun because it signifies something. It's a name for something. The adjective that comes before it also has basic signification, and this sub-expression in English grammar we call an adjective. And finally, we have the sub-expression standing, which also has basic signification, and it's different from a noun because it signifies an action, the action of standing. So this is a verb. These three sub-expressions can be strung together into composite expressions. So the expression handsome man is a composite expression. It has composite signification because its parts, it is composed of parts or sub-expressions that have basic signification. This kind of composite expression in English grammar we call an adjectival phrase, and this adjectival phrase is then composed with everything else in the sentence to make the whole sentence, which also has composite signification, a different kind of composite signification than the phrase. And this kind of composite signification is called a sentence or a sentential signification. The difference between the composite signification of a sentence and the composite signification of a phrase is that the meaning that is signified by a sentence is a complete meaning. A speaker can say a sentence and stop, and the listener is satisfied with what he hears. But if someone says a phrase, an incomplete sentence, like handsome man, the listener is not satisfied and he doesn't feel that a complete meaning has been signified. So there's two kinds of composite expressions. One is signifies a complete meaning, and the other one a incomplete meaning. Now, this is an introduction, and we're going to read the words of Abhari in which he will expound on these concepts. But what we want to pause for a moment in order to note is that these expressions are all language specific. So Abhari's text is written in Arabic, and so the examples that he brings and the expressions that he brings are Arabic expressions. Arabic words are not exact. Arabic grammarians do not exactly break down their language in the same way as English grammarians do. They use different terms. They have different kinds of composite expressions, several different kinds, and English grammarians they categorize or classify their language using different kinds of sub-expressions. And the Greeks who described this concept in their books would have used different kinds of expressions. The expressions are all language specific. The way that they are composed, the exact order in which the expressions need to be placed in order to signify a composite meaning are all language specific. In English, the subject is placed before the verb. In Arabic, the subject is placed after the verb. Expressions are language specific. But these expressions, remember, are sounds that signify a mental language. The expressions signify mental concepts, and when expressions are composed, what is actually happening is that the concepts, the basic concepts that the basic expressions signify, these basic concepts are being composed. So these language-specific expressions signify a mental language. And this mental language that is signified by multiple language-specific expressions is universal. It does not vary from language to language. The universality of this mental language is very important to the Muslim logicians, and what they are trying to describe to us is actually not the language-specific expressions. They're trying to describe to us the universal mental language that is not language specific, that lies behind these expressions. That's why when in this lesson, when I explain the concepts of the Muslim logicians using English terms and English words and English grammar, it's completely equivalent to what the Arabic-speaking grammarians are doing when they use Arabic terms and Arabic grammar, because the point of the logicians is actually not the language that is spoken, but it's the mental language that's universal. This is a point that's mentioned by the logicians themselves in their commentaries. And the logicians are trying to describe the universal mental language. This is actually an important point because it's because of the universality of this mental language that the rules of logic are objective. If the mental language varied from one spoken language to another, then that would mean that the logic of those who spoke Arabic would be different than the logic of those who spoke Greek, which would be different from the logic of those who speak English. And this is a philosophical position that is advanced by some philosophers and grammarians and logicians, but it's a mistake, and it's something that the Muslim logicians went to great lengths to point out that this is not the case, because because it would what it would do is it would relativize the logic that is used in the Quran to prove the truth of the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the falsehood of everything besides it. And that's why I've described this course as an introduction to Islamic logic, and I've deliberately avoided the term Arabic logic, which is prevalent in academic discourse. Logic does not vary from language to language. Logic is universal. So with that brief introduction, let's come and study what Imam al-Abhari is telling us about basic expressions. With that introduction, let's return to the question that guides this lesson. How exactly does logic use language? We now understand what it means for logicians to use language in order to signify things in a basic way, signify mental concepts in a basic way, and what it means for them to signify mental concepts in a composite way. Let's begin with the basic signification of expressions and see what Abhari has to tell us about this. And he says, in Arabic, he says, اللفظ الدال يدل على تمام ما وضع له بالمطابقة وهو على جزئه على بالتضمن إن كان له جزء وعلى ما يلازمه في الذهن بالالتزام. So this means the first key word here is the word al-lafz. The word al-lafz is frequently translated as word, but what it means here is not a word but an expression. It means something that is vocalized, something that is said, a sound. And what it means is a meaningful sound, and that's why it's been translated as a meaningful expression, even though that's not exactly what he says, but that's what he means. And the commentators on Abhari's Isagoji, they point that out. What's a meaningful expression? Well, an expression is either meaningless, this is called al-lafzul muhmal, or it's meaningful, this is called al-lafzul musta'mal. So an expression is a sound, and let's take two sounds. The first sound is Zaid. So imagine the sound Zaid. Forget the meaning that it indicates. Just imagine the sound Zaid. And then let's turn it backwards and imagine the reverse sound Diaz, Zaid, Diaz. Or in Arabic, the reverse sound would be Daiz, because the reversal is, we've made it dependent on the alphabet. So Zaid, Diaz. Now the difference between these two sounds, between these two expressions, is that one of them, namely Diaz, is meaningless. It's an expression, but it's not meaningful because it is not assigned a meaning. Whereas the other expression, Zaid, is meaningful. It has the meaning of the particular person who has that name. And because it's been assigned this meaning, it's called a meaningful expression. So the expressions that logicians are interested in, like most people, are meaningful expressions. So meaningful expressions, they signify their meanings. What does it mean for an expression to signify a meaning? The logicians, they say that it means that when you hear the expression, you understand the meaning. So what it means for the expression Zaid to signify the meaning of the concept that represents the specific person, individual called Zaid, what it means for it to signify this concept is that when you hear the word Zaid, when you hear the expression, the sound Zaid, this concept comes to your mind. You understand this meaning from the expression. Now, how do words signify their meanings? This is something that logicians also go to, they discuss in detail, but we'll just we'll just mention it in brief, just give it a brief treatment. So they say that expressions signify their meanings by linguistic conventions. A linguistic convention means that people who speak a language have a common understanding about what particular expressions signify. So someone who speaks English, anyone who speaks this language, the people who speak this language, they have a convention. They have a convention that the word man indicates a particular meaning. And those who speak Arabic, they have an understanding that the expression rajul, which means the same as man, has a particular meaning. How are these meanings understood? These meanings are understood by linguistic conventions. You need to understand the linguistic conventions of a particular group of people who speak a particular language in order to understand this signification. So expressions, they signify their meanings by linguistic conventions. Meaningful expressions signify their meanings in three ways, in one of three ways, and these are the three ways that he's going to describe here. Now, although the specific meaning that is signified by an expression is language specific and it's learned by learning the convention of the speakers of that language, the way in which they signify their meanings is not language specific. The Abhari is going to give an example, and the example is based on a particular language. In the original text, it's based on the Arabic language. In this lesson, I've translated it to the English language. But the point is not the expression. The point is the mental language. The point is how the basic expressions of a language signify the mental concepts. And that method of signification is not language specific and is not based on linguistic conventions. Athiruddin al-Abhari explains these language independent ways in which expressions signify mental concepts by dividing the signification of meaningful expressions into three kinds. The first kind of signification, the first way in which a meaningful expression signifies its meaning, is called complete signification. And he illustrates this with the expression human. So the word human, the expression human in English, or the expression insan in Arabic, signifies the meaning of rational animal. Now, rational animal, you need to imagine this as a meaning in the mind. You need to separate this meaning from the word rational and from the word animal. This is incredibly difficult to do, as we noted briefly in a previous lesson, because the frequency with which we use verbal expressions to signify mental meanings, this is so frequent, the frequency is so large that we are accustomed to thinking of mental concepts with their associated expressions. But really, the meaning of rational animal is a language independent mental meaning. When somebody conceives of this meaning using some other language, for example, the way that you would say rational animal in Arabic is hayawanun natiq, even though the expressions have changed, the meanings have not. So on the left hand side you have a verbal expression, human or insan. On the right hand side you have a meaning, a mental meaning, which we are as logicians trying to get at with expressions, but the point is not the expression, the point is the meaning. Now, this meaning in the mind, this concept in the mind, here it's a composite meaning, it's a composite concept, it's not a basic concept. Rational animal is composed of two concepts. The composition of mental meanings is something that we'll do very shortly when we learn how to define concepts. But for now, just note that the meaning is a composite meaning. And that's why it can have the three kinds of significations that Athiruddin al-Abhari is explaining. So the expression human signifies the composite meaning rational animal completely. When an expression signifies the complete meaning that has been assigned to it by linguistic convention, this is called a complete signification. In Arabic, this is called dalalatul mutabaqa. When it signifies a composite meaning, then not only does it signify the complete meaning, over here rational animal, but it also signifies the parts of that complete meaning. And when we consider a word's and expression's signification of part of its meaning, for example, the expression humans signifying the meaning of rational or the meaning of animal, that kind of signification is called a partial signification. In Arabic, it's called dalalatut tadammun. Finally, an expression can signify meanings that are implied by the meaning that it signifies. So the meaning rational animal, the logicians explain, it entails, it is associated with the meaning of something that is capable of learning. So this here now, we want just to take the higher level point, the illustrative point. This is actually based upon a particular metaphysical conception of rationality, a metaphysical conception of animal and learning and all of these things. And that's assumed because at the time when Athiruddin al-Abhari wrote this text, this was shared by everybody. There was no disagreement regarding it. I think that conception is still pretty accurate, and but in our times, the meaning of human being, the meaning of rationality, the meaning of learning, the meaning of writing, all of these things, these are not agreed upon by everybody. And for that reason, this exact example and many of the exact examples that we will encounter in our study of this book, they won't register the way that they used to in the past. But we don't want us to get. This is a course on logic. It's not a course on metaphysics or human psychology or any of these things. So what we want to do is we don't want to get involved in the specific examples, but we want to take away the higher point. The examples, as scholars they mentioned, in the Muslim scholarly tradition, they say that an example is used for the purposes of illustration, and it's not actually a condition of an example that it be correct. And that's why there's a famous statement. They say, "Laysa min da'bir rijal munaqashatul mithal." It's not from the habit of people who are truly interested in learning a concept and sincerely interested in learning a concept. It's not from their habit to argue over examples. So we're not going to argue over examples. We're going to take away the higher point, and the higher point is that the mental meaning of rational animal, the moment we conceive of it in our mind, the mere conception of this meaning leads to the conception of another concept, namely the concept something that is capable of learning. The mere conception of rational animal leads to the conception of something that is capable of writing. And so the logicians, they say that the concept rational animal implies the concept something that is capable of learning or something that is capable of writing. And since it implies these two concepts and the expression human signifies the concept rational animal, we can also say that the expression human signifies the meaning of something that is capable of learning or something that is capable of writing. And this kind of signification is called an implicative signification. Now logicians, they go into again great detail on the nature of this implication, but one important point that we take from these discussions is that they say that this implication must be a non-inferential implication. The meaning of rational animal entails the meaning of something that is capable of writing without requiring any inference. If it requires inference, some intermediary premise or something, then we don't say that the expression signifies the implied meaning, but we merely say that this implied meaning can be inferred from the original meaning. So it needs to be a close and non-inferential implication for us to say that the expression human signifies that that concept. So there's three ways in which an expression signifies its meaning: complete signification, partial signification, and implicative signification. Let's read the words of Athiruddin al-Abhari and review all of this now. Now, when we read his words, they'll make sense to us. So he says, an example is the expression human. This expression completely signifies the concept rational animal, partially signifies the concepts rational and animal, and implicatively signifies the concept something that is capable of learning or something that is capable of writing. And this is what we just used to illustrate. So if you now review what he wrote from beginning to end, it should now make sense to you, and you should go back and reread his words in light of this lesson. And that brings us to the end of Athiruddin al-Abhari's lesson on basic signification. And in the second part of this lesson, in which we're investigating how exactly logic uses language, we'll learn about composite signification. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم وهو حسبنا ونعم الوكيل.